Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Henry Haight. As you know, I'm an artist. I'm Henry Haight. I am a multidisciplinary artist.
Promote the idea of I wouldn't like to say strange sexuality. I play around with the idea of sexuality.
Now everybody breathe. Who wants to be famous? Who wants to die for art? I do.
It's not possible to have taste without intelligence, and it's not possible to have intelligence unless you have a bent towards the unorthodox. And this is where sexuality comes in, because fashion is always reacting against what has become the orthodox. And as sex is the strongest influence in fashion, to play around with new sexual motifs is to be, you know, in the avant-garde.
Dun, 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 dun.
Thanks for visiting, people. Welcome to the channel. This topic is on why am I an artist and why do I make art? This has perplexed me because virtually every time I start an artwork, I'm with a piece, and essentially sometimes, you know, I have doubt of, is this going anywhere? And there's this always continual shift of yes, no, maybe, is it any good? Is it, you know, what's happening here? Over the course of my entire life, it has been the one constant of me creating. Art has been my lover, my savior, my sanctity, my sanity, as well as, you know, my phantom twin. A little backstory. I grew up in Orange County. I was born in the city of Orange and raised in Santa Ana in a really I wouldn't say domesticated, but a just very dysfunctional home. And Santa Ana, it was not far from the Tragic Kingdom, and I remember growing up, I could always see the fireworks from Disneyland from my backyard. And as strange as that sounds, you know, Disneyland isn't really that far. And I remember even in my teen years driving to Hollywood, you could always see the fireworks. So I had to get into the clubs before 11 p.m. before they started karting. And so that was always a constant, and the whole Tragic Kingdom kind of thing. In grade school, they thought I was colorblind and essentially would pull me out of classes. I remember early, around first grade, a teacher taking a green crayon, because I was actually coloring in a green dog. We were making paper bag puppets, and she took it. She's like, you have to use a regular color, and I'm like, no, I want a green dog. And she was like, and I painted Purple Mountains, and you know, I heard a song about Purple Mountain's majesty. So and a lot of the times I would take things as I think all kids, as they do, take things in literal form. And as we know now, in the 70s, teachers weren't the best and encouraging, but rather than stifling and restricting creativity. Essentially, when they pulled me out of class, I had to do these, you know, trace the figure 8, do the letter B, you know, find the letter 13, and all these things. And I thought, I had no idea what these were, and I just thought they were games. However, it made me feel special because it was the I don't want to say the focus was on me and playing these games, as opposed anyone else. And I can't really remember if I talked to any of my other friends in school about it, but it wasn't until I got to junior high to where I was about 12 that I saw, me drawing things, and people asked if I could have that. And it was a way for me to make friends. I thought, an artist was sitting in a studio like Van Gogh or Picasso and just painting and going to be famous. And I took art school in high school and in junior high. I excelled at that. Music, English reading, and art were very, very natural to me. Math and any kind of science I sucked at. And I noticed during middle school that they had the gifted children, but I never really understood that whole gifted program because I didn't think anything special other than they read Shakespeare and played Dungeons and Dragons. And again, it goes back to that curriculum of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It wasn't until high school that I noticed that with music and art that I truly, truly excelled, that I started to virtually hone this. And I also was like many teenagers. I had zero confidence whatsoever, thanks to my parents. And I was cocky because I had zero confidence. I was making shit up as I went along. And, I wanted to out of wherever I was. I wanted away from Orange County. And essentially, I remember my mom taking me very young as very young as a kid. I was about 7 when I saw Cabaret.
Keep the girls from taking off all their clothing. So, don't go away. Who knows? Tonight we may lose the battle.
I fell in love. I was like, I want to be there. Pinocchio, when they go to the boat, I was like, oh, that's for me, And because I was foisted into catechism, through my grandmother, it took away from Saturday morning cartoons. And
Stars, where did you ever get that awful hairdo? It doesn't become you at all. Here, for goodness sakes, let me fix it up. Look how stringy and messy it is. What a shame. Such an interesting monster, too. My stars, if an interesting monster can't have an interesting hairdo, then I don't know what things are coming to.
Playing with your friends, and it was kind of, I always thought church was a real drag, but even in catechism, you weren't allowed to be creative. You had to, do scriptures and, you bang your hands with a ruler and no. And I think, within my artwork, because I was constantly told that there was something defective with me being a young gay man, that I rebelled. And I started to look at certain things that countered what I was told, like rock and roll, glam rock, Kiss. They're very macho, but they were all in makeup and high heels. And, to a young boy in Orange County who was just like, this is a lot better than Bugs Bunny and louder. And, around 12, about 19, or I would say about 11, 1978, my first pocket money, my own money, my allowance, I remember buying Parallel Lines by Blondie. And it was a direct shift from Donna Summer. Tragic foreshadowing that I was going to grow up to be gay, but anywho. But that wasn't why I became an artist. The whole thing was that Debbie Harry and Blondie opened me to another world. It took me to somewhere else. And it led me to Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol led me to the Beat Poets, Edie Sedgwick, the Velvet Underground, and the art scene of that. Much like punk, it was this. I was starting to learn the trajectory of the New York art scene and going into the underground, as well as the involvement of punk through that. And these things had a profound effect on me. But, on top of seeing Leonardo da Vinci's Leda and the Swan at Hollywood Movieland Wax Museum in Buena Park, another artist that rang true to me was Kent Twitchell. And Kent Twitchell is a renowned and esteemed street artist. He's to me, he's considered one of the godfathers of LA street art. And he always did the Freeway Lady. And it was a lady holding a an Afghan blanket going into the moon, and her eyes were piercing. Every year, anytime we went to LA or downtown LA, we would see this off the 5, and it captivated me. And then when we parked in a parking lot, there was this massive, I think 6 or 7 story married couple, all in blue. That also was done by Kent Twitchell. So these two things were burned into my head of like the area of where I lived, and a part of the city. And I, the thing about the Moon Lady and the married couple is that they had an impact, much like Leda and the Swan. And I wanted that kind of magic. I wanted to create something like that because they made me go, oh, that had an impact. They spoke to me in a sense. And I hadn't really thought of being an artist until I went to high school. And the early 1980s, everything was, I was too young to really understand the 1970s punk. But as I became a teenager, I actually started to do more research. And virtually when I would go to LA, I would see, true real punks that I thought were real punks, and virtually whoa, what is this? And the subversiveness and this you can do it yourself really inspired me to be more creative with the way I dressed. The album covers that as a kid that I was looking at, that I was in awe of. The soundtrack to my youth, the albums were very graphic and very impactful visually to me. And this is where I started to think, okay, I really want to create something. I want to somehow make an impact and make a difference with my work. But I knew it was an incline. And also when I started to hit puberty, stealing... this is probably... I didn't steal this one. I had to rebuy it. Stealing a Tom of Finland magazine. And because, much like my dad's pornography, that also kind of had an effect on me, because I remember my dad yelling and being so angry at me for doodling all over, scribbling all over his porn magazines. And as a child, you don't know what those are. It's just hey, more paper. And that's what I did. And even that still, those moments impacted me and show up in my work, because Pablo Picasso said that the innocence of the hard part of being an artist is to keeping the child within you alive. And my parents come from the school, if you get a job and you do this and just go. And these kind of shaped me in my work visually. I was rejecting the restrictive nature of religion and Catholicism and all that bullshit, and much to the annoyance of my family, and trying to come to terms with my own sexuality. And virtually the early 80s, of the AIDS epidemic, and virtually, punk ending and new wave coming in, and virtually it morphing into different things, and seeing Jane's Addictions live, and the Black Crowes and all these other bands, which is like, it was an amazing time to be a fucking teenager. Drugs were cheap and safer. Sex wasn't, but you could go to gigs for under $10, and sometimes you have double bills or whatever, and you could do it yourself. And this was the thing that there was a small inkling for a kid who had zero confidence to sit there and say, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can really do art, or make a zine, make flyers, and a few friends asked me to make some flyers and stuff. And then all of a sudden in my 20s, the queercore scene happened, and I, as a revolution against the Reagan era and how the treatment of gay men and people with HIV, protesting, and essentially, again, I still had zero confidence, but I remember going to a gay pride and walking up to the Tom of Finland booth and saying, how do I get involved? And very drunkenly walked up and said, how do I get involved? But the president, Dirk Jenner, was like, well, we're looking for volunteers if you want to come. And I did. I showed up, and he took me under his wing. He didn't have to, but I did some work around the Tom of Finland house, and this was around 1990. And I volunteered, and I got to meet Tuco, and I still, even going through art school, I was still like, how the fuck do you be an art? Because I didn't believe just because you say you're an artist, does that make you an artist? I'm drawing, and I've had one or two things, but nothing's really coming. Like I'm not making money. And he looked at my work, Tuco looked at my work, and Dirk looked at my work, and I started to think that I wanted to be an erotic artist. But then while I was with the Tom of Finland Foundation and company, that they were perceived in a particular way, and certain artists didn't want to align themselves with Tom of Finland. Not that they saw the work was, bad or anything, but it was. I was starting to understand the ideology of an artist brand, and it was one thing to see underground art and like Irving Klaw, Betty Page, and all these certain things, and I on top of working for Tom of Finland, I started working in porn.
Buzz off, creep. I'm not in the mood. Yeah, sure, I'll do it for $50. Oh.
As a kid, I always wanted to run away and join the circus. I was like pageantry and everything, and I would tell my mom, when the circus comes, I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna go there and like fuck everybody. I never, but working in porn was the closest thing to a circus. So and I was still trying to fight having a fucking day job. And I really wanted my art to come through. And essentially, tattooing happened where I was getting tattooed by a friend, and he said, hey, we're opening a shop. This is how you can like make money drawing and stuff. And then I was met with another hurdle of like, I could draw, but I couldn't draw a tattoo. So, tattooing still hadn't evolved into what it is right now, more contemporary fine art and stuff like that. So I had to unlearn my technical things to learn how to draw a tattoo rose, how to draw a tattoo skull. These were the type of things that and the fundamentals that were drummed into me all over again. So it was kind of like on the hamster wheel, just learning, and taking all this stuff in. And essentially, I was like, okay, tattooing was a way for me to make means, but I still didn't feel that I was an artist. And when I started to virtually take a leap of faith and move to London, that's where things started to change. I started to tattoo some more high profile people. And essentially that's when things like kind of took off. A gallery said, hey, you know, we like what you did in this group show. Do you have any stuff that we can see? And little by little, people started like contacting me saying, hey, can you do that? And my first corporate thing was Nissan. And again, I was met with a different challenge to where the corporate collaborations, right now, collaborations are a fucking dime a dozen, you know, because, you know, influencers and stuff are like to sell something. And I know this whole thing of like artists selling out. And my conundrum was, okay, if I don't do it, does that mean that I'm going to lose out on viewers or collectors or buyers to see my actual work? And if I don't do it, someone else will do it, and they reap that benefit. So it's a double-edged sword. So I said, okay. And as I've kept at this, my whole purpose of being an artist is to make a work that is transformative, that speaks to people emotionally, makes a difference or an impact visually, and starts a dialogue. More than anything, you know, screw the fame, screw the money and stuff. That is the main thing that why I want to do and why I make art. You know, I think, you know, certain things don't come to me naturally. Some pieces are very easy. They're methodical, and I can, you know, think them out and flesh them out quite, and then maybe edit them and refine them. But looking at some of my old drawings and stuff, and I still kind of allow myself the freedom not to be perfect. I just like a doodle. So when I look back at it, I go, okay, that's an idea. I can sequence it in my head like Terminator, and then try to break it down. And you know, even doing paint sketches, I'm not trying to find that perfection. And I'm going to be honest with you. If I look at my full body of work, I would probably say 20% of my work I'm truly proud of. You know, the Amy tattoo people love and stuff, and I look at it as badly drawn, and that's what I'm known for. But the whole body of my work is completely different, and I still try to challenge myself to make something that is transformative. That's why that's what I want to do. And I remember telling my partner that, you know, if I was going to really do this, not only just tattoo, but, you know, take on a studio and really go at this, I wanted his blessing, because I was going to invest my time, my money away from these things on top of running a business. But I was committed to it, and I remember thinking it'd be okay if I'm broke for a while, but you know, I have to, if I treat it like a business, I'll do all right. And it hasn't failed me. There are things I would change, obviously, or do slightly differently, but the learning curves that I feel very fortunate and very blessed to meet some of the people, come in contact with certain artists, and you know, show with them, as well as, you know, have them as on my phone as someone I could talk to or whatever, and virtually meet like-minded people who look at, you know, subversive works, and aren't the namby-pamby status quo. They challenge, and that's what I want to do. I want to challenge the viewer and make them think something different. So that's why I make art, and that's why I want to be an artist. But even after a divorce and virtually bankruptcy, I'm still drawing. I've had crippling things where I've had to doubt and go, I don't know if I could do this. And, you know, I'm still making work. And with that, you know, I think, just because someone paints, a few things a bit, if you keep at it, one of those pebbles, the water will rise, and eventually you'll get to that point. But over time. So I will say, keep creating. Ask yourself why you make your art. And, keep doing it.
Dun, 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 dun. So when you heard that music, you knew we were going to see the three gals, right? So in this film with these three gals was this one gal who was really weird, right? Her name was Irma Munson. Wore big glasses, real stringy hair, really awful. Carried her books like this. She was really smart. You could see around corners and stuff. And she had like short hair and glasses and like pimples. And she smelled like food and stuff. And she was like really weird. And she had cooties the whole bit. And she wore her nylons backwards, which is real tough to do. And she wore a really long skirt with a pin through her skirt, through her leg, and back through her skirt again. Every time you see her in the film, you'd hear her theme music. You'd hear this. Dun, dun. Ah, dun, dun. Dun, 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 so you knew there was something not quite right with Irma. So every time the girls see Irma, they'd